Thank you again for joining this session. We have a lot to cover, and for that reason, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Since the first minutes is just like formalities, covering formalities, describing what the purpose of this session is, and basically some housekeeping rules that I have to share with you all. So as the presentation shows there, the purpose of today's workshop is an overview of some Horizon Worlds tools. And the reason why we are sharing this information is because we want to expose to creators all the new tools and features that are available currently in Horizon Worlds to create experiences. We normally get comfortable just using the same tools over and over and over, but then we forget that Horizon has been releasing new tools over the last few months, right? That enhance the experience for the creators as well as the visitors. So a little bit of housekeeping content here. So this content is aligned with the design and scripting categories of the skills matrix. And basically, we're going to be covering things that you can implement for mechanics, core loop, progression, as well as scripting. Mostly, I want to say actually everything that we're going to be covering today involves TypeScript. So hopefully also that is going to serve kind of like a motivation for you all to encourage you to start learning TypeScript if you're not using it already. And of course, we're going to be covering some of the Horizon World systems. By the way, I have two sessions about covering these topics this week. So considering that there is a lot of content that we're going to be sharing, half of that content is going to be shared today, and then the other half is going to be shared the next session that is, I think is Thursday. Uh, that way, that's going to allow me to, to give you more time in case you want to ask some questions. This is not meant to be kind of like a step-by-step process of how to create these mechanics, uh, but it's mostly kind of like a demo of these features. And then we're going to open the mic, and then the chat for whomever wants to ask a question. Some of this I already shared with some creators last week. But today we're going to be talking a little bit more of some additional ones that I didn't get the chance to cover during that session. All right, so let's start from the beginning. So this is a world that I'm putting together. My goal here is that after having all the scripts in this single world, then I'm going to be sharing this as a template with you all. Um, I'm still trying to figure out what would be the best strategy to share these scripts because I wanted that to be as smooth as possible. So that way you don't have to do many configurations on your own. I want to share this as is, so that way you can explore and then play with the scripts and then learn from it. So let me start right away. So let me actually, let's just start with this one here. It's called matchmaking. So one of the recent features that Horizon now has enabled for us as creators is the ability of opening and closing an instance programmatically. This is actually very useful because, for example, you might decide to close the instance once a match, like an arena game starts. Let's say that you have like a players versus players game, and then you don't want spectators to be just walking around while the players are, in the arena already, fighting against each other. So you might decide to close the instance at that moment. So that way everybody can finish their match and then reopen it again after the match is over. So for example, I already have the coding here, but unfortunately we won't be able to see what happens when the instance is closed or open because I'm in edit mode. So you cannot actually close the edit mode instance, but I have it here already configured that when I press the button here, the instance closes, and then when I click again, then the instance opens. And let me show you how easy this is. So if I open the script that is behind this mechanic, that is going to be the close and open instance. It's going to be this script right here. So the trick behind this is literally just this line here. Everything else that you see in this script, let me actually zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. Everything else that you see in this script is just nice to have, right? Like for example, like I have a test gizmo that displays the current state of the instance, or I have a cube that changes color whenever I open or close the instance. But the key component is this line right here. So basically I'm saying, hey, for this world, use the matchmaking API and then call the allow player join method. And then I'm just passing true or false, depending if I want to open or close that instance. And just as simple as that, then we can, programmatically close and open the instance during the illustration that I have today. Can a player inside still invite a player to this now closed instance? Uh, Technically, yes, they can. I know that there have been mixed results of what happens when that occurs, but the expected result is that that player will be placed in a new instance instead. So the player is going to be invited. Then when they try to join that closed instance, uh, they're going to end up in an instance on their own. So that's actually a very good question because you have to be mindful of the social experience that Horizon is, because you want to, make sure that everybody can be together the most of the time. What you can do is that as soon as you close the instance, you can show a message to everybody in the current session saying, hey, the instance is closed. We're going to open it when the match is over. So as soon as you keep that conversation going with their players in the world, then that's going to make sure that players do not have a bad experience. Good question, though. So the next demo that I have here, this is something that I didn't get to cover last week, is NavMesh. So NavMesh for me is kind of like the coolest thing that Horizon has created, because it's kind of like Inception. It's kind of like something that you would have never expected to see in Horizon worlds. So what NavMesh does is that it calculates dynamically the area that it is possible to navigate for an NPC or any other object that you might have in the world. Commonly, this is referred or whenever we hear about NavMesh, we always hear the idea of using it in conjunction with an NPC. However, you can also use it, for example, to randomly place object in a map, right? Without you having to manually specify where that object should go. Um, if I don't know, if you as a creator have, I don't know, created experiences where there are like hidden objects in a map, you probably have done it in a way where you have like reference points in a map, right, in the world, and then you use those reference points to tell the coins or the treasure where to go, right? But with NavMesh, you can do that automatically. Let me show you a quick demonstration here. So this is a maze, and just imagine that this sphere here is a mouse, right, or a mice. And then what that sphere is going to try to do is that it's going to try to find a valid path from this start point right here at the start of the maze all the way to the exit right here. So for the exit, the only thing that I have here in this entire map is this reference tiny cube that tells me where the object should go. So now if I play the world, you're going to notice how this sphere is going to automatically find its way all the way to the cube over here. So let's see what happens. So let me place this let me place the camera in a place that we can actually see it from the top. Okay, there you go. So we can see the entire maze here. So if I play the animation, I'll see in a second. There you go. There you go. It's trying to find its way all the way to the end. And then actually, if I place the sphere in a different location, maybe if I move it a little bit to the right here, I need to find a way that a path that doesn't have a wall. Let's say that if I maybe like put it here, maybe. Let's just start from here. think that doesn't have any obstructions here. Yeah, because then it should, if this works, it's gonna go this path now. Yeah, let's see if it works. So let me play the simulation now. There you go. And it found the path right there. So what is happening here? And this is the part that I think is the coolest part of this NavMesh. So this is a gizmo. This is the called navigation volume, and you can find it under the gizmos area here. So if I search it, is the navigation volume right here. Um, After I add the navigation volume to cover the entire area that the NavMesh should scan, then we can go to the navigations, to systems, then navigations, and in here we create that profile. So if I look at the details of this profile, which is basically this pencil here, you can see the properties that I assigned to what the expected NPC attributes are. So for example, I'm saying that, hey, every NPC that is going to be navigating through this maze is going to have a height of zero point 0.2 meters, right? Right now it's really tiny. A radius of a radius of 0.1 meters. Everything in here is in meters. So that means that the radius is 0.2, right? Because it's just the radius. Sorry, the diameter is 0.2 meters. And then I'm saying here, hey, the maximum number of degrees, right, that the NPC is going to be able to climb is going to be 5 degrees, yeah. And then in this case, I'm saying, hey, this NPC will not be able to go over any obstacles. And that's why I have this part here that says 0. So after I configure that profile, and there you go, here's the part that is cool about this. I can now click on this little eye here to be able to see the result of the scan. And then if I click here, which is called, the button is called bake. If I click it, then you're gonna see right there the result of the scan, right? So basically this is telling me right there visually what area of the map the NPC is gonna be able to traverse. If I zoom in, for example, you're gonna notice that the NavMesh cannot go through walls, right? Because I'm saying, hey, you know, the NPC won't be able to do that. And you're gonna see how the changing the profile is gonna affect the result of the scan. Like for example, in this case, I said that the radius of the NPC is 0.1 meter, but let's see what happens if I say now that the radius is like 0.3 instead. So it's like uh, 3 times larger, right? So if I click save, and then I click on rebake. Let's pay attention, focus, like if you're, you know, as you watch the stream, focus on one area. Like for example, like I'm gonna be focusing on this area right here. If I click on rebake, let's see what happens. See how the area now shrunk? Because now that the NPC is wider, right, I increased the radius of the NPC, in this case, the sphere, from 0.1 to 0.3. So it's 3 times larger. So now the NavMesh is smart enough to then calculate, okay, so now that the NPC is, larger, it will not be able to go through this path here because this path is too narrow. The same thing with this one. And that's the reason why the NavMesh doesn't scan those areas as valid. Uh, and you can see now that the hallways now are a little bit more narrow. So yeah, so that's basically the cool thing about NavMesh. So you don't have to use viewpoints anywhere. You don't have to like use reference objects or whatnot. I'm using a reference object here just because I wanted to demonstrate that, you know, finding the exit scenario, but you don't have to do that. You can randomly calculate a position in the map and then have the NPC just roaming around in the world. So I'm gonna go ahead and change it back to be a little bit thinner. So I'm gonna change this back to be 0.1 and then save it and then rescan it again. So navigation, scan, there you go. And now it covers more areas. Any questions about NavMesh before I continue? If you have a maze that somehow changed position, can you rename it in NavMesh? Yep. Yes, you can rebake it. That's the technical term of it. So let me show you actually, reminds me, let me show you the scripts for that. That's gonna be the NavMesh demo. Open external editor. So in here, there are two main components that you need for NavMesh to work. You need the manager, the NavMesh manager, and this is what I'm doing here. I'm importing those APIs from the NavMesh library. So we need the manager and we need the definition of what that NavMesh should be. The manager basically is the one that allows us to get all the different profiles that are currently in the world. And then by using that, as I'm doing right here, basically I'm getting, hey, I'm declaring the manager. And then after I have the manager, let me zoom in here a little bit, I can then get the specific nav mesh by specifying the name of the profile that I'm using. So after I have that nav mesh already defined here, we could potentially rebake it by doing something like this, nav mesh rebake right here. So for example, following the scenario that you mentioned, if we had, let's say, like a door that opens and closes, after the door opens, you can then call this API rebake. Or if you close it, then you can call it again rebake. And then that is going to be effectively, recalculating the navigation area in the world. Something to keep in mind is that, of course, I'm sharing here the overview, high-level description of what the feature is, but I highly encourage you to read it through the documentation because there are many things at play. And probably in the future, we can, create a workshop only about NavMesh because I think there's a lot to talk about it. But one of the things that you have to take in consideration whenever using NavMesh is that if, for example, I click on this maze here, uh, yeah, I have it selected here. Uh, this part here is very important, right? Include in bakes. That is how the nav mesh knows, hey, this is something that I need to take in consideration whenever I'm scanning the world. If I were to say that this is not, including bakes, and then I go back to system and then navigation, and then I rescan this, you're gonna notice now that the nav mesh is gonna say, hey, I can go just through the entire world. And then if I uh, stop and play the simulation, you're going to notice that the NPC now is going to go in a straight line. So if I play the simulation here, now it's a little bit harder to see because of damage is there, but you can see there how now the NPC goes directly there because there's no obstacles, right? So that is another thing, another one of those gotcha moments that you want to make sure that you have everything configured correctly in order to get the nav mesh working properly in the world. So I'm going to turn it on again and rescan. Good question. Okay, any other question about NavMesh and the navigation areas? Remember that if you have any questions throughout the duration of this presentation, please ask. My intent is not just be, talking all the time, but, ideally, the content of this presentation is addressed to the specific needs that you might have. So feel free to ask any questions during the session. If I don't have the answer, I don't know it all, then I'll get back to you, offline and give you the solution. Okay, this is the NPC avatars demo. I shared this demo last week, but this time I have a little surprise for you. We have better and improved assets thanks to Yelitza, a space glitter unicorn. She created this nice backpack that the NPC is going to be wearing around. And she also created this nice blaster, this weapon here that the NPC is going to be grabbing and shooting. Thank you, Space Clear. There you go. Thank you. You saved my life because last time I was just using cubes. And I think that this is way much better representation for a workshop. So thank you so much. Okay, so so in here, I'm gonna go ahead. I detached the script intentionally here because I didn't want the NPC to run around and then, spoil the surprise. So I'm gonna go ahead and connect. Oh, let me stop the simulation first. And then let me connect the NPC agent here. Okay, and everything is connected. So now, after I play the simulation, we're going to see the NPC then, running through each one of these viewpoints here and doing different things on each one of them. So brief description because the NPC is just going to be running a lot. So let me describe first. So in this station here, the NPC is gonna grab this football, it's just gonna hold it and then continue running with it. Then when it reaches this station, the NPC is gonna be wearing this jetpack, and then it's gonna wear it. It's gonna be attached to the NPC, just like a real player. Then when it reaches this station, the NPC is gonna grab this weapon, and then it's gonna start shooting around. Luckily to not me, but it's just gonna be it's just gonna be shooting things around. And then when it reaches this station, it's just gonna reset itself. So let's see what happens. I'm gonna play the simulation. Off he goes. Okay, so in this one here, it's gonna grab the football. It's on his hand. Then it's gonna look how nice that backpack looks like on that NPC. Thank you, Yelitza again. And it's shooting with the blaster, and then it's just gonna continue doing that. So yeah, this is kind of like a quick demonstration of all the capabilities of an NPC. Um, Probably I'm gonna expand this a little bit and also add a demo of throwing, right? Because it makes more sense to throw this ball like a football. Uh, but I'm gonna add one station here to throw the ball. Um, and as I mentioned, for those that joined late, um, my goal here is that, after all the workshops are done, I'm gonna be creating assets for each one of these scripts and then sharing them with everybody, making a post on the forums probably. So that way you can all have them and learn from these examples as well. All right, any questions? Uh, So yeah, we have, I don't know, that pistol you had was, oh yeah, thank you, Josh. Uh, Thank you. Okay, EP, yeah, all right, cool. Any questions about NPCs? Any concerns? Something to mention about NPC avatars is that they literally count like a real player. So you want to be mindful because you don't want to, for example, create a world that has, let's say, like a capacity of 12 players, and then you have 10 NPCs running around, because then only 2 players are going to be able to join the session. So you probably want to design a system that allows you to balance the number of NPCs that you have in the world with the number of real players that you're going to have at the given moment. Like definitely you can use NPC. Let's say that you have a game that is only possible to play that experience when you have multiple players in the world. Like again, like a players versus players game, right? But then you only have one real player in that instance. Let's say that a player, doesn't know anybody because, they're new to the platform. They can go to the ready up area, and then if you notice that with the script, you can then start spawning NPC players. So that way that single player can start the game without having to wait for anybody. So I think that that's the best use case of NPCs. Actually, another good use case for NPCs is to serve as guides, right, in the world. Again, if you have like a really large map, for example, a large world, you can script one of these NPCs in a way that the real player can follow them around to explore the world. So that also encourages, retention and yeah, and just makes the world more engaging. Um, as a reminder, you can always personalize the NPCs by just clicking the gizmo here, and then you can say, just assign John Doe or something like that, and then it'll show there in the avatar. If I refresh, there you go. So the name is now showing there. I think that for transparency purposes, and to avoid people impersonating other creators or other players, um, the NPC comes with this label on the bottom of the name. Um, so everybody know that's an NPC, right? Because we don't want people, let's say, because someone might create, another avatar that looks exactly like me, and then just have it running around and shooting other players, and then, that's going to be a risk. So yeah, so that having that tag here helps people know that this is an NPC. Okay, so let's see. So we have. Yeah, both Leo. So definitely, yeah, we're gonna be sharing the recording. And as Tawali mentioned, we have another session that is coming up, later this week, that if there is a strong desire of reviewing, some of these mechanics again, by all means, I'm going to be showing those mechanics there. My hope is to, in that second session, I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to start with other ones, other mechanics. So that way, give the opportunity for creators to also attend to that session and observe or other type of mechanics as well. And the recording, as I mentioned, is going to be available in the future. And hopefully not, Tualu can answer how long we're going to have to wait for the recording, but hopefully not too long. Leo King of Miami is saying here, Super Rumble bot Bash uses NPC to fight against. Can we do the same with these? Or does that mean, or does that team have features we do not have yet? Absolutely, you can do exactly the same thing. Of course, you have access to a set number of features, right? It's up to you to combine those features in a way that looks in that you obtain the same results. Let's see, for example, the bot bash world uh, uses the shooting pose, right? The one, the pistol pose, for example, whenever it's grabbing a hand. You also have the handgun pose if you wanted to use that one as well. Uh, you can make the NPC rotate, you can make the NPC run around, you can make the NPC walk if you want them, for example, to go a little bit slower. So if you combine all of different attributes, right, you can definitely recreate the same thing as Bot Bash has. Of course, you can imagine the amount of scripting that is behind that world, right? Because, for example, you don't want two NPCs going to exactly the same place. So you probably have to design some logic to prevent that scenario, right? Also, in one of my prior projects, another thing to take in consideration is that you don't want all the NPC following the same player at the same time. You probably want to establish some limits there, so that way visitors do not get discouraged. For example, again, going back to the player versus player example, if the if there is a single player, real player in the world, you don't want then, having like 9 different NPCs shooting only at that player. You want to make it in a way that NPCs also fight against each other. A great example, by the way, is the recently released world by Red Rocks and Alex from Video, right? They made a tag game, right, with zombies, I think, where NPCs can tag each other as well. They don't only attack real players that visit the world, they also attack each other there. So that's a great implementation as well. Okay, so let's see what else we have. Yeah, it's basically customizing NPCs is one of the best parts. I have seen many designs here, Santa Claus or, yeah, anything. You can definitely create any design. Scott here is asking, any idea when we can make NPCs talk specific lines? Same questions, but add AI to the NPC. Good question. There is no secret that Meta has AI features. They have examples in Bober Bay, and I think also in Citadel, where NPCs can talk to you, right? You can literally say anything to them, and they're gonna do their best to understand what you're saying. I think that King of Miami, who is here, he has a funny video on Instagram where he shared some of the conversation that he had with the Bober Bay AI. So really funny. Highly encourage you to see it, to watch it. But unfortunately, that feature is still in development. So currently only 2P and 1P creators have access to that feature, and hopefully hopefully not too in the near future, fingers crossed, that feature will also be available to us. Inevitably, it's going to be available, for creators, but we don't know when. Sometimes that timeline is not shared with us, but we do know that it exists, and Meta is doing, what they can to release it as soon as possible to creators. But yeah, that's a good question, because I'm also expecting that to be available soon. All right, so world streaming. So for world streaming, this is another cool feature that allows to change the environment dynamically in the world. So let me show you a quick demonstration of how that works. Actually, I'm gonna delete what I have already prepared here. And instead, let me show you how this is set up. Uh, so the only part that I will not show here is I already have two additional worlds that I created. One is called World 1, and then the other one is called World 2. And those two worlds are already published with the corresponding assets and all that. They're already published, but they're privately published, right? So that's the requirement for world streaming. After having those worlds set up and already published privately, that only I can access those, I can now use a gizmo, which is the sub-level one here. If I bring that gizmo into a world, it's going to be placed at the center of the world, but then I can move it around. This is the cool part. So since those two additional worlds are already published, I can now click on this window here, and then that's going to open the list of available worlds that I have. I'm going to select world 1 in this case. And by doing so, this is going to actually update to be the same cover page that I have in that world. Currently, I don't have any cover page, so that's why it's showing me just the grid. But also, it has the world ID here. So why this is important and how this is useful is because by connecting that world here in this gizmo, I can now switch this to be active, and then that world that I published, now I can just move it around and then place it in the location that I want it to be whenever I want to, display that world in this current world. I have to also thank Yalitza again, Space Glitter Unicorn, for the amazing asset that she created here with the terrain. I just added the trees here from the asset library, but she created uh, the terrain for this demo. So thank you again. Another lifesaver moment here. Last time I was sharing just a dog on top of a rock. So this is more, representative to what I wanted to show. But yeah, so by doing that, as you can see, we can easily, place these worlds or these assets wherever I want to place it in the world without having to guess exactly where that asset is going to be after I start playing the scripts. For example, if you have used asset spawning, if you remember, you have to specify the location, you have to specify the rotation, you have to specify the scale and all of that. Whereas with world streaming here, you can simply use a gizmo, and then you can do the same thing, rotate and scale and all that. And for this demo, I'm going to be using two assets. So that was the number one. And then let me bring the second one. It's going to be the sub-level again. And then I'm going to click here. This is going to be world 2. And then I'm going to do the same here. By default, you want this to be unloaded, right? Because the experience is going to be unloaded when the world starts. But just to make it easier for me for placement, I'm going to switch it to active. So that way I can easily see what the asset contains. And then I can, align it, so to make sure that that experience is going to load exactly where the other is placed. So uh, the name of this feature is world streaming. And again, that is exactly doing what the name implies. The other two worlds are published, and the only thing that those two worlds contain are these two assets, right? And then that world is being streamed into this one. So these assets, even though they're collidable and all that, you can walk around those. Um, actually the source of this information is in the other world. That's why the other world must be published before you are able to use it here. If you don't find it when you click on this, preview window here, that means that that world is not published yet. Or if you made changes in the other world, and then when you use asset streaming here, world streaming here, you don't see those changes, it's probably because you forgot to republish that world. So now that I have this here, let me just rename this world so I can actually reference them in the script. So I'm going to call this one world 1. And then this one is going to be world 2. Perfect. And then I already have this set up, just to save time. And then this one is going to be world 1. And then this one is going to be world 2. Okay, so now that I have that connected here, I'm gonna go ahead and unload these assets. So unload this one and the other one as well. And then if I play the simulation, nothing is here. But then if I enter this trigger, we'll see what happens. So if I enter this trigger here, the first world loaded, oh, we are in the Caribbean and the and the beach or something, like you can create like an environment, people having fun here. Of course, by the way, you can include any type of dynamic elements in here, scripted assets. Right now, I only have like static assets. Again, this was just like a quick demo, but let's say like, I don't know, like you have like again, going back to the players versus P versus P example, because that's the most commonly used theme. You can have like different like, weapons with different themes and different environments. Imagine like you start fighting in the moon and then you end up like fighting in the sun, for example, if people can survive there. But yeah, in this case, it's like, for example, this environment. And then if I go back to the trigger, then it switches to the next one. And in this one, I did include some, interaction. In this case, I have the famous chicken here, a big one here. But as you can see here, you can include anything. In this case, I'm also including an NPC, which is the Unity Asset Bundle, and with a completely different environment, right? And as you can see, you can explore, walk around, and then you can decide to despawn that experience later. Um, of course, these examples are really small. If I show you the scripts, I think I have it open already here. A second. Okay, so this one is going to be the world streaming. Okay. So for world streaming, I have a very simple scenario that all it's doing is basically switching the environment whenever I enter the trigger. So world streaming basically has is a promise. So I'm saying, hey, uh, unload or uh, activate the environment. These are the two APIs here. By the way, before I share these scripts, I'm going to go ahead and add some comments. For example, uh, this is the API to unload the environment. And then this is the API to actually activate it. So this is the API to activate the environment. So both of these are promises. And what does that mean? Basically, a promise is something that you execute, and then it allows you to then wait for the result of that promise. And then the result can either be successful or successful. And then you can do something around that. So why am I mentioning that? Because as you saw in this example, everything loads like really fast. So if I go here, the environment is there. If I go back, that one is gone, and then the new one is there. And if I continue doing that, this is the one that removes it all. And then if I continue doing that, everything is super fast. Uh, don't this is a very simplified example, but of course the load time is going to vary depending on how complex the experience is. So these are really simple, so it's loading like in literally in 2 seconds or less than 2 seconds. But let's say like if you have an experience that is covering the entire grid, for example, it might take sometimes between like 4 seconds, 5 seconds, depending on the network latency that you might have or other players in the world might have. But that's the beauty of having this as a promise, because that's precisely what I'm doing here. I'm saying, hey, go ahead and unload this or go ahead and activate this. But then that's what this part is doing. Only then, after this is complete, go ahead and show this pop-up saying that it's unloaded. Or only then, after this experience is activated, go ahead and show this pop-up. I can also, as a best practice, you can also do something here that is going to allow you to display errors if there are any. So for example, if you wanted to display the error that this unload action might generate, I can do something like this. So I can just put here, this is what is called the catch method. So in this case, now I can show that error saying, hey, now with this, if this fails for whatever reason, catch that error and then, console log it. And then I can do the same thing here. I can just copy this result and then apply it here. There's a lot to talk about promises, and I highly encourage you, again, like in the process of learning TypeScript, go ahead and, um, research a little bit of what what a promise is and how to, handle them. But yeah, that's one of the benefits of using a world streaming in this case. Any questions? Let me see through what do we have here. So the wall is saying some content will be the same and some will be new. Yep. Yeah, as you can see here, there's a lot to cover. And I want to, I want to be mindful with each tool. I just don't want to go, flying through each one of them. I want to stop decent amount of time on each one of them to make sure that I share at least the most important information of each feature. So make sure to attend next on the next session that is going to be later this week to see other demonstrations as well. And again, this information is going to be recorded, so you're going to be able to watch it, offline later. Thank you again, Space Glitter. Yeah, of course, we all think that the Space Glitter's art is awesome. Uh, and then here's a list of tools that Pigeon is covering today and Wednesday. Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing this list. Thank you. That's the PDF. Uh, Pat is saying, if the player picks up an interactive item from the stream world, what happens when that world becomes unloaded when they are holding it? Good question. It's going to be very similar as asset spawning. Basically, if they're holding something and then that world is unloaded, um, that is gonna make that asset disappear. By the way, that reminds me, we only covered 2 stages of world streaming, but there's actually another one, which is loaded. If you have a really heavy or expensive asset that you know that is gonna take like a long time to load, ideally you want to call this one first, loaded. And basically what that does, let me stop the world. And basically what that does is that you might think that it's doing nothing, but actually what loaded does is that it preloads that asset in the background in a way that whenever the state changes to active, then the experience loads faster. Um, but yeah, that's normally ideal. Actually, the best practice even for small assets. Uh, but yeah, you can preload the experience first, and then you can activate it. Okay, let me see any other question. Can you pull specific objects from a center world without the whole world? Yeah, actually, let's see, do we have time? I guess actually I can demonstrate it here. So let's say that I want to stream this world where I am right now into a different world. So what happens is that I can then bring this gizmo again, the sublevel one, and instead of using the default as it is, we change this property here called exclude. And what that's going to do here is that you can see it removes everything, that preview that we saw before is not there anymore. And what happens with this gizmo now is that this basically turns into a folder where you can then place things that you don't want to stream into a new world. Like something that would be like 99% of the time that you probably want to exclude is the entrance spawn point, right? Normally in that main world, you're gonna have a main spawn point where people, where creators are gonna be appearing when they join the session or the instance. So you probably don't want to include this one whenever you are streaming a world. So the way how you can exclude it is, again, just changing the attribute of the gizmo from deep link, which is the default, to exclude, and then you just start dumping you just start like dumping stuff in there that you don't want to include in the streaming process. So for example, in this case, I do not want to include the spawn point, so I'm just going to drag and drop that spawn point into the sublevel. And then, as I mentioned, this becomes kind of like a folder here. And now whenever I decide to stream this world into a different one, then this spawn point will not be included. Great question, Papacy. When does one determine using world streaming versus asset spawning? Great question. So asset spawning is perfect whenever you are spawning like individual elements. Like for example, in this case, I have a football, right? But let's say that now the player is going to play baseball. So now you want to despawn that football and then spawn a bat and a ball. Or if you want to now switch to basketball, you can now despawn this ball and then bring a basketball and then, a hoop. Uh, so in those scenarios, right, when I think when you have like interactive items that are like, that you're gonna be switching a lot, you're gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna be like replacing a lot. For those scenarios, I think it's best asset spawning. Also, as I mentioned, these are like world streaming is more useful whenever you are spawning like a whole experience. I wouldn't use world streaming to spawn, let's say, like a weapon alone, right? Because that's kind of like an overkill. Remember that you have to publish the entire world and then, use the gizmo for that. Whereas for something that is grabbable or something that's maybe kind of like I don't know, maybe like a billboard that you want to change dynamically, it makes more sense to use asset spawning on those because those are individual interactive items that you want to be replaced, they want to be replacing dynamically. Like another good example that I can mention, like if you have played, let's say, I don't know, Roblox, and then there is a fun world over there that is kind of like a runway, I think, where players have to switch their avatar, wearing the different clothes and stuff like that. That would be a perfect example for asset spawning because then players can, let's say, use a custom UI to select the outfit that they want to use. And then you can simply spawn that shirt, that skirt, that, dress that that player wants to use. And then, they can just um, walk around with that. So that's a perfect example for asset spawning. However, again, following with that example, if you wanted to change the theme of the fashion show, for example, instead of being like, let's say, like a studio, now you want to use a fashion show that is based, I don't know, in Croatia. I don't know. I don't know I don't know why I thought about Croatia, but that's the first thing that came to my mind. But I don't know, like if you want to have a fashion show in California and then another one in Alaska, right? I don't know who would have a fashion show in Alaska. That's cold. But yeah, you get the idea. You can then change the environment using world streaming, and then you can use asset spawning then to spawn and despawn the individual elements in the world. Okay. Um, I did not know about the catch. Yep, that's you can use it to catch any errors that's applicable to any promises. Asset spawning is also a promise. Uh, Heck, moving the NPC here is also a promise, and that's how I'm able to rotate it. Like if I show you real quickly, if I go to the NPC test, and then if I go to the NPC agent section, that's precisely what I'm doing here. Well, yeah, this is a promise as well. So basically I'm saying, hey, rotate the NPC, right? This is a promise. If I hover over this, you're gonna see here that says, this is a promise. And then only when I'm done, then go ahead and move around. I could also, again, do the same thing here. Just add a cache and say, hey, catch, um, fail. There's gonna be an error as well, error. And then I can say console error, console error, fail to rotate the NPC. something like that, right? And then there's another one, which is kind of like the, again, there's a lot to talk about promises. There is another one, finally. So the then only is only called when the promise is successful. The catch is only called when the promise fails. And then finally calls whatever result the promise is. So that's another one that you can just use whenever you want to do something, regardless of the result of the promise. So yeah, there's a lot of like hidden features there. Um, Natasha, is there any good tutorials for these gizmos? I realize I don't really know what I can do with them. That's actually a good feedback because, that's actually the purpose of this workshop, to actually uncover all the things that we can do with the current features. Yes and no. There are definitely some documentation available in the, let's see if I am able to go here, and then I go to NPC. There is some documentation available here in the official Meta portal. And I highly also encourage you to check the community documentation, which is available here. There is one that we created very, very recently that covers a lot of information, a lot of this information as well. Natasha, yeah, there's oh, you haven't touched those. Okay, so that's a good thing. Yeah, there's definitely documentation around those. Joshua, I say here, you can more or less ignore the snap. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but you can definitely ignore that one. Well, technically, no. The yes and no. I ignore it. I'm one of those carriers that do not use it, but that's designed to be used for players that use teleport movement. Uh, and there aren't too many around, but yeah, ideally you should be inclusive. You want to include everybody in your experiences. So that's the purpose of the snap destination. So players that use teleportation, they can go to those locations. Yep, that by teleportation. And then the Alaskan fashion show will be fire. Are you able to connect to active scripts within the world stream? Once it's spawned, it sends events to activate certain aspects. Yep, 100%. And by the way, I highly encourage you all to attend tomorrow's MAM, no, AMA, I think I'm saying it right, with charts, where he's going to be covering some TypeScript concepts there. So basically, we have different event systems in Horizon. Some of them, for example, like the code blocks that we have been using forever, in code blocks scripting, you have to specify what objects is going to receive or send the event, right? Or who's going to be receiving that event. You have to connect it with a PIL. However, in TypeScript, you can send an event to the world, and then whomever is listening to that event, then it's gonna then do something with that. So with world streaming, that's precisely what you would do. You stream the world, and then you design it in a way that as soon as the asset is loaded, send an event saying, "Hey, I'm ready. Tell me what you want me to do." And then the current world is going to receive that notification, and then continue the conversation that way. But yeah, that's one of the benefits of using TypeScript for your worlds. Definitely, again, attend that session tomorrow. Thank you, Homet, right there. That's the link if you want to attend. Yeah, okay, so I think that we are almost at time, but I think the 5 minutes that we have left is going to allow me to demonstrate something that I think is really cool. So give me 1 second to set it up. The real pigeon is going to join right now. There you go. That's the real pigeon. I'm actually using an impersonator. So let me just go small here. Worlds, and then enter. Okay, that's me right there. I'm just going to move her around a little bit. Okay, it's going to be, yeah, we are 12 pigeons, so we are two of them here. So, okay, so what I want to demonstrate here is this Dolly camera that I have here. So as I mentioned, for content creation, I think this is going to be very useful. And basically what this is going to allow us to do is basically explore the world the same way how you explore the world, in the desktop editor. So if I join this session, this stage here, now I'm able to, to navigate the world here. I have some instructions here on the screen that I can toggle on and on, so that way you know how to use the camera. But basically now I can just simply, travel the world like this. So for example, I can just like, zoom in and then imagine that someone is like playing a game. Like, let's say like if I go to the NPC avatar, again, I'm moving here, not with the desktop editor. I'm literally just using the script that I made, using the camera effects, and then you can just navigate the world like this. And let me show you what the players in the world are going to be able to see. I'm going to switch places here with my avatar. So I'm gonna escape here, pressing E, and then I'm going to switch places. So you can see what what the players in the world are going to see. So now I'm switching to my other avatar here. Let me start the Dolly, and then oh, 1 second here. Let me stop and play the world. All right, we're doing demo live. Okay, so let me start the demonstration. Okay, cool. So now, okay, yeah, you can see it there. So let me now place the camera in front of my avatar so you can see what other players are going to see. Literally, they're going to see like a camcorder like this that is going to be approaching them, kind of like recording them. So I don't know if you can see it there on my screen. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to look at two monitors at the same time. That's why it's kind of like rotating that way. But as you can see, for example, this is what they see. So basically, I'm using that object to navigate the world around, right? And then record the experience. So now you can just fly around and then, uh, record the world and then take like, like a helicopter, right? And that you can then uh, capture cool videos and stuff. But yeah, that's going to be also included in the list of assets that I'm going to be, or scripts that I'm going to be sharing. I'm still, again, I'm trying to I'm figuring out, well, what is the best strategy to share this information. But by all means, that's coming either this week or next week after we are done with all the presentations and other workshops. Um, any questions? Again, this is the demonstration of combining all the different cameras APIs that we have available. This is using camera APIs to attach the camera to the camcorder. I'm also using focus interaction to be able to detect when you click the screen and then you start rotating around, that's what's happening. And I'm also using there connecting to inputs from the keyboard. That's how you can then, switch again. Let me do it again. If I, excuse me. Okay, so if I go here, you can see the controllers there on the screen. So I have like up, left, forward, backwards, down, right. You can also increase or change the speed, and then you can rotate or reset the camera. Okay, so I think we're wrapping up, but let me see if there are any questions that I can answer real quickly. Uh, yeah, we're all real, Hamed. Thank you, Space Cleaner. Thank you, Papa C. Thank you, Ashley. Josh, yep, Space Cleaner, we're gonna be sharing all these. Um, Glad to hear that you're thinking about some use cases, Boss Leo. Uh, is that focus interaction? Yep, as I mentioned, is combining all of them. Uh, Thank you, Pat. Glad to hear that it's being useful to you. Always a problem to take a good picture after I've already pulled the triggers. Yeah, so hopefully this is gonna help. Can we change the camera to look like anything? Yes, you can make it look like a frog if you wanted to. Uh, Mikey, you're welcome. There you go. All right, cool. I think we made it on time. We're 1 minute over the end of the hour, but as I mentioned, I encourage you to attend to the next session that is gonna happen later this week. And we're going to be rotating some of this content. We're hopefully going to have better and examples as well. Thank you for attending, and I look forward to talking to you later this week.